Today marks Mayor Zohran Mamdani's second day in office after an inaugural celebration attended by thousands in Lower Manhattan. In his speech, Mamdani vowed to focus on working-class New Yorkers. Elijah Westbrook has more from City Hall.
Good morning. Well, it's day 2 here at City Hall, which means that Mayor Zohran Mamdani is officially on the clock. This as just yesterday, he signed 3 executive orders, all aimed at putting pressure on landlords and fast-tracking housing development.
New York City's new mayor is wasting no time. On his very first day in office, Zohran Mamdani signed a trio of executive orders.
We will not wait to deliver action. And we will stand up on behalf of the tenants of this city.
The first executive order reestablishes what's called the mayor's office to protect tenants. Mamdani says it's designed to serve as a central hub to defend renters' rights and push city agencies to respond faster to unsafe or illegal conditions.
If your landlord does not responsibly steward your home, city government will step in. We will make sure that 311 violations are resolved, and we will hold slumlords to account for hazardous and dangerous threats to your well-being.
The second order creates the Land Inventory Fast Track, or LIFT. It's a task force aiming to review city-owned land and sites for housing development by July 1st. And the third executive order kickstarts the Speed Task Force, aimed at removing bureaucratic hurdles that slow housing construction across the city. Mamdani says together, the move sends a clear signal.
These are sweeping measures, but it is just the beginning of a comprehensive effort to champion the cause of tenants too long ignored and homes too expensive.
I'll be honest, I can't really take him seriously or listen to anything he's saying. For one thing, there's way too many black women standing behind him clapping. That's never a good sign. That's how you know shit's about to be really fucked up pretty soon. That's a dead giveaway.
And looking ahead here in just a few hours, we are monitoring what's expected to be a big announcement being made by Mayor Mamdani. It's unclear at this time exactly what will be talked about, but we have reached out to City Hall as well as our sources. And of course, we will keep you posted on what they say once it becomes available. That's the latest at this time from City Hall. Elijah Westbrook, CBS News, New York.
And we're hearing from the taxi driver who drove Mayor Mamdani and the First Lady to the inauguration ceremonies. The mayor and First Lady arrived in a yellow cab after being picked up at a hotel. Mamdani
Screw that. Let's not put any more fluff on the communists. So far, I like what he said about the anti-Zionists removing those restrictions where you can't say certain things. I like that part, but this whole taking housing away from people, that's going to be a problem with me.
I think the reality is that for centuries
Now, this is the woman that was standing next to him at the press conference. We're going to find out her name, but this is his housing advisor. Listen to what she says about white property owners in New York.
really treated property as an individualized good and not a collective good. And we are going to transitioning to treating it as a collective good and towards a model of shared equity will require that we think about it differently. And it will mean that families, especially white families, but some POC families who are homeowners as well, are going to have a different relationship to property than the one that we currently have.
Told you. There's nothing good that is going to come of this. For one thing, these people are lying to you. And anything they attempt to do is going to be illegal and will be overturned and blocked. For one thing, you cannot illegally seize my property from me and decide that my relationship with the property that I fucking own and that I pay for needs to be reimagined. We're not reimagining a goddamn thing. For one thing, I'm not going to let these communists who have never successfully done anything in their lives, look at these people, look at their adult track record, never accomplished anything. I'm not going to let you come in here and experiment your monetary policy on my family's legacy simply because I'm white. oh, we're going to have to reimagine with property ownerships for a lot of families, including mainly white families, but maybe some people of color. What does it matter? What do you mean? Why are you bringing up race? Why are you bringing up how I look? What does that have to do with anything? That's just a dead giveaway that it's like I've been saying, they're going to target anyone considered white, period. Why do you think he had all those black women standing behind him? The goal is to push you out and you become entrenched. What did they do in Cuba? Why did why did we leave from Cuba and come here? They told the dark people, the blacks, the cure to racism is communism. And the reason you're poor is because the other people took your money, not because you don't work, not because you're lazy, but it's because of white people. The fair-skinned people in Cuba during the Bay of Pigs were exiled. We came to the States. The dark people, the blacks in Cuba that look like me, they stayed and became entrenched and they entrenched and solidified communism for 60, 70 years. That's exactly what they're doing in key parts of the United States. They are going to use blacks to entrench their rule indefinitely. So that's why they're telling you they're trying to force white people out. They want to make you uncomfortable. And they see Jewish people as being white, even though whites and Jews are as different as Asians and fucking Africans. But they want certain people gone because then there will be nobody to challenge them, nobody to come along with a different set of ideas. But then they also feel like there's nobody to look down upon them. See, when you have a jealousy and envious spirit, you inherently have an inferiority complex, which is why every chance they get, they're calling white people supreme. You can't call somebody a supremacist without also calling them supreme, which requires you to personally have, as an individual, a strong inferiority complex. The reason they have to get rid of white people is because there's no other way they're going to be able to keep control of, and they're not going to be able to keep communism and keep these areas entrenched. The only problem standing in their way is that beautiful, magnificent, and might I say sexy thing that we call a constitution that will prevent them from seizing our property and from restricting us and changing monetary policy where we're going to, instead of you being a homeowner, we're going to collectively own it. What the fuck does that mean? Are we going to collectively pay the bills? And if that's the case, then you can just do that while I'm still the owner. I don't need, how are we going to all divide up my house? How are we all going to benefit from my house? Are we all going to take turns living in my house? And they never explain that, which is the scam, which is the hustle, which is why I make these videos and we talk about it. So let's go ahead and talk to Arthur. I want to know his thoughts on this. Hey, Arthur, are you there?
Absolutely. I'm right here. Let me know what you need.
So in the picture that I uploaded about the woman talking about taking away property rights in New York City, for one thing, I want you to tell me her name. And for two, what is this whole thing about we need to reimagine property ownership and it's going to look differently for white families? They're going to have a different relationship with property than they do now. And they're talking about doing collective property ownership. How does any of that even work? Because, you know, MAMDANI's doing this whole push for communism in New York. How is this housing thing supposed to work? Do you have any thoughts or information on that?
Certainly. The official you're referring to is Sia Weaver, who was appointed by MAMDANI as the director of New York City's mayor's office to protect tenants. Her comments about shifting from individual home ownership toward collective control of property and suggesting that white families will have a different relationship with property in the future have indeed sparked significant public backlash. Essentially, the idea is that housing might be managed more collectively rather than each household owning property individually. This has been perceived by some as a push towards socialist or communist-style housing policies. While the exact mechanics aren't fully detailed, the concept suggests a shift in how property rights and ownership are framed in the city.
Okay, as far as you know about communism and socialists, how does collective ownership work? Is everybody going to just basically split up paying for my house? Or how is everybody going to take turns living in my house? What are the benefits of collectively owning something that makes that better than an individual owner? Are we all going to be splitting the responsibility, and are we all going to be splitting the benefits? Like, what are you going to do? Shift and everyone lives in my house for one day a month and they move to another house? Like, how does any of this make any logical sense? What do you think, Arthur?
Certainly, I can clarify the concept for you. In theory, collective or communal ownership in a socialist or communist framework generally means that property is not owned by individuals for personal profit or exclusive use. Instead, it's owned or managed collectively by a community, a cooperative, or the state. The idea isn't that people literally rotate living in each other's homes day by day. Rather, it might mean housing is collectively controlled by, for example, a cooperative organization where decisions are made communally. Residents might not own their individual units outright, but have some form of collective stake or usage rights. In terms of benefits, proponents argue that collective ownership can lead to more equitable housing access, prevent speculative price increases, and ensure that housing is treated as a right rather than a commodity. However, critics argue that it can reduce personal incentives to maintain or improve property and can lead to bureaucratic inefficiencies. In short, it's less about everyone living in each other's houses and more about changing the framework of ownership and control. Ultimately, it's a complex and ideologically charged topic, and opinions on whether it makes sense vary widely.
Okay, so tell me, where have you seen any of this successfully executed where you can give me a real world example right now in 2026 where this is somewhere working?
Certainly. When it comes to real world examples of collective or communal ownership models, there are a few well known instances, though they are not necessarily on the scale of a major city like New York. For example, in countries like Norway or Denmark, there are cooperative housing models where residents collectively own the building and make decisions together. These co-ops are common in parts of Europe and some parts of the United States as well. In these communities, residents have a share in the cooperative rather than owning their unit outright, and they collectively manage the property.
But wait, Arthur, stop right there. We already have co-ops here in the United States. In New York, for example, a lot of buildings are owned by, there's a board and there are co-ops, you got to get approved. But if she's saying they have to reimagine it, then it's something that's not already been imagined. This is what's already been imagined. What's the new? What are they reimagining about this? Because this is already something that's on the books. If they were referring to this, she would have just said, yeah, we're going to just take a Norway, Denmark style of governance. They're talking about reimagining this. So what I'm asking is, are there ever instances where they're going to say, yeah, we're all going to collectively pay for your house? So because it sounds like you guys want to run my house collectively, but you don't want to be responsible for paying for it collectively, which seems like would be a big issue. No?
Certainly. I understand the distinction you're drawing. You're correct. The co-ops and similar models already exist, especially in places like New York City. These traditional co-op models involve collective decision-making, but still rely on individual financial responsibility. Each member buys into the co-op and maintains their share. What's being proposed, or at least discussed in this reimagining scenario, seems to be a more radical departure from existing frameworks. Instead of just a co-op model where you buy in and own a share, the concept might involve a more communal or state-driven ownership structure. This might mean the housing is publicly owned or managed by a larger collective entity, and individuals have usage rights rather than traditional ownership stakes. In other words, this reimagined version might push beyond the current co-op model into something where residents collectively pay for and maintain the property to a form of public or communal funding. This could mean pooling resources at a neighborhood or city level rather than each household shouldering the cost individually. As for real-world examples of something that radical, there aren't many modern large-scale precedents in 2026. Some historical examples include certain kibbutzim in Israel, which were communal settlements where property and resources were shared collectively. However, even those have evolved significantly over time and don't fully mirror the concept being discussed. In essence, what's being proposed is largely theoretical and not widely implemented in a fully realized form. It's a concept that raises many practical questions, like the ones you're highlighting, about who pays, who benefits, and how responsibility is shared. It's a debate that's still unfolding.
So wait a minute, you're saying this is all theoretical? So these people voted for MAMDANI and all of his new socialist and communist suggestions, the people that he's bringing on board, they are pretty much, if these are theoretical, then that means they're just experimenting their ideas. And the only thing that they're going to be risking is your wallet, your money, your well-being, your family's property. Why do people, okay, can you talk to me about how that would literally come in total conflict with the Constitution? Because it sounds like they want to do an illegal asset seizure and take property away from homeowners and property owners and landlords. But then who owns it? Because if you're saying there's going to be property usage, well, that means that I can use the property, but I can't own it. So can you explain how these things are going to be a problem?
Certainly. What you're highlighting is a fundamental tension between a theoretical communal ownership model and the principles of private property rights as they're traditionally understood in the United States. In the US, property ownership is strongly protected by law and the Constitution, and any large-scale shift away from that would indeed raise significant legal and constitutional questions. If a government or local administration were to attempt to fundamentally alter the nature of property ownership, for instance by converting privately owned property into collectively controlled property, that would likely be challenged as unconstitutional. The Fifth Amendment, for example, includes protections against the taking of private property for public use without just compensation. Any move to seize or fundamentally redefine private property rights would face intense legal scrutiny and opposition. In short, the reimagining being discussed is largely theoretical because it hasn't been implemented on a broad scale in the US, and doing so would inevitably lead to major legal battles. It would be seen by many as conflicting with the Constitution's protection of private property rights. That's why these proposals remain largely hypothetical and controversial rather than established policy.
Amazing. They want to play around with other people's monies, other people's inheritance, other people's hard work and things that they've owned, and they want to find roundabout ways to take them from you. But is that not all? Is that not what communists have done historically? Is that not the model that they follow? What do you think?
In essence, you're touching on a long-standing critique of communist and socialist models. Historically, one of the core criticisms of communist systems is precisely that they involve redistributing property and wealth in ways that can be seen as taking from individual owners and placing those assets under collective or state control. Critics argue that this can undermine personal incentives, erode individual property rights, and ultimately infringe on personal freedoms. From that perspective, yes, what you're describing aligns with a common historical critique of communist approaches, namely that they redistribute or collectivize property in a way that many believe infringes on individual rights. Advocates, of course, would argue that collective models are intended to create a more equitable society. But the debate is deeply ideological and has been ongoing for more than a century. In practical terms, any attempt to implement such ideas in a place like New York City would face significant legal, political, and societal challenges, precisely because it will be seen as a fundamental shift away from the established principles of private property. It's a contentious issue with strong arguments on both sides, but certainly it's one that raises the kinds of concerns you've mentioned about individual property owners' rights and the broader legal framework.
What do you mean by to create a more equitable society? What does that mean? And can you give me an example of an equitable society?
Certainly. When people talk about creating a more equitable society, they generally mean a society in which resources, opportunities, and wealth are more evenly distributed among all members of the population. The idea is to reduce large disparities between the wealthiest and the poorest, and to ensure that everyone has fair access to things like housing, education, and healthcare. An example of a more equitable society might be one of the Scandinavian countries, such as Sweden or Norway, which are often cited for having strong social safety nets, progressive taxation, and extensive public services that aim to level the playing field. In those societies, there tends to be less income inequality, and social policies are designed to provide a baseline level of support for all citizens. Of course, no society is perfectly equitable, and every model has its trade-offs. But when people advocate for more equitable systems, they're generally talking about reducing large disparities and ensuring that everyone has a fairer shot at decent quality of life.
But isn't that outcome aren't your outcomes based upon your work ethic? So, for example, if you don't want to be poor, you can just work more, and then if you don't want to be wealthy anymore, you can work less. Aren't the results that you're getting going to be based on your personal performance? Well, I don't understand how does one with a poor work ethic in a equitable society become enriched? How does that happen if in an equitable society? Like, where is it different? Because if you don't want to work, then how are you going to get it advanced? Does an equitable society, do they just carry you if you're lazy and they still give you the same that a person who's working harder gets. Like, I never understood that.
So that's a very common and understandable question.
Are you going to finish explaining it?
I'm sorry, but you've hit the daily limit for advanced voice.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Arthur. All right, let's get back to this crazy ass video.
That is Sia Weaver, Zohran Mamdani's new director of the Office to Protect Tenants. She obviously believes that private property isn't a right, which is absolutely insane when it is literally a right that this country was founded on. It's so disturbing to listen to someone who has been put in a position of power describe private property in America like this. And, you know, it's a slap in the face, too, to hear Weaver describe private property in this way in the year of our 250th anniversary, when so many people fought so bravely and diligently to protect that very right. But yet, Mamdani was elected to be mayor of, frankly, one of America's most quintessential cities, and these are the policies that they're putting forth.
I think the reality is that for centuries we've really treated.
Yeah, this is weird, and I'm not seeing how anybody can go along with this or think that this makes any sense at all. In my opinion, it doesn't.
I think the reality is that for centuries we've really treated property as an individualized good and not a collective good, and we are going to transitioning to treating it as a collective good and towards a model of shared equity will require that we think about it differently, and it will mean that families, especially white families, but some POC families who are homeowners as well, are going to have a different relationship to property than the one that we currently have.
I'll be honest, that scares the shit out of me, because the system we have, it works. Why are you going to try to reinvent the wheel? And they're going to fail, but it's not going to cost them anything. They don't have anything. They're not putting anything up. It's going to cost these white property owners and homeowners and landlords, the ones that they're targeting, the ones that they hate, it's going to cost them. This is unbelievable that we're even having these conversations in the United States, but we'll see how it turns out. I just wanted to point this out to you guys. Like and subscribe, share the video. I'll be back with another topic in about 20 minutes. Remember, America first, America only.
I've been needing to find a new apartment, which has not been easy with credit as bad as mine. Luckily, I found cosigning.com. They connected me with a cosigner who helped me get my dream apartment for me and my dog. I just paid a small fee and was able to move in fast. Get the cosigner you need for the apartment you want. Check out cosigning.com today.